A warm welcome to Santiago Calatrava. I'm delighted that you can join us today, even though it unfortunately needs to be virtual. I know that you had planned to be in Madrid with all of us until an accident made it impossible, but we're so pleased now that you're feeling well enough so that at least we can talk together in this format. This organization, the Design Leadership Network, is an international group made up primarily of people whose focus is on residential design, which I know is not your prime area of specialization. But I thought it might be fun, nevertheless, to start out, not by talking about the bridges and the train stations and the other large civic projects that you are best known for, which we'll have plenty of time to get to in a few minutes, but to talk a little bit about your own residences. I have been to your house in New York, which is a pair of adjacent townhouses on Park Avenue that you beautifully renovated and which are elegant and rather minimalist, which may surprise some people, given that you are known for a more, sometimes almost romantic overtone to some of your work with those extraordinary curves and tracery and so forth. So can you say something about your house in New York and also about your main residence, which is in Switzerland? Is it also something of your design, and what did it mean to you? How did you make it come to be?
Well, first of all, Paul, I'm so pleased to speak to you, and I am also relating the fact that I cannot be present in Madrid. But you see, I'm also very pleased about the opportunity to speak to people who dedicate his activity as an architect and designer, you see, into the houses and apartments, and because it's genuinely something extremely intimate related to the person. Designing housing, you see, or designing things for a particular person, for a particular family, or for a particular group, you see, is something extraordinary and remains in the history of the architecture as a milestone, you know, it's a foundational stone. And if you look, you see in the history of the 20th century, you have extraordinary examples, as much here in Europe as somewhere else, you know, but also in the United States. And if you think of the activity of the greatest architects of the 20th century, from Frank Lloyd Wright to Mies van der Rohe, Le Corbusier, Alvar Aalto, etc., you see they are all, you know, they have in their creative work, you know, extraordinary examples and also original examples. What Richard Neutra, you know. Mostly, I have only had opportunity in my own personal circle, you know, to think where, as you pointed, the houses in Park Avenue, the house where I live here, a little bit the apartment we have in Paris, and now we are back here to Zurich where we started. And it is interesting also to see how our life has been characterized through these cities. You see, when we was in Paris, we employ a lot of time visiting museums and myself personally learning, see, from the personalities of the 20th century. The different fundamental was that in New York, many of the artists we admire was alive.
Yes.
So we could make, you see, for example, we has had the privilege, you know, to be even a friend of Frank Stella or Alex Katz, who is or
Yes.
or many others. You know, the wonderful movie Midnight in Paris of Woody Allen, you know, where he wake up and he's in this extraordinary world. And we have been a little bit experiencing it, but alive, you know, because effectively New York has had this enormous quality. I'm saying in a very intimate way, you know, the United States is a very influential culture, call it like that. Do you understand? Eventually we'll find the peaks, you know, in places like New York, eventually educationally Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, whatever, you know, but it's very, very influential. It has, in my opinion, is very much our time. And it's giving to young people also a sense of hope.
I want to come back to in a moment to the project that you referred to, that of course was a main focus of your attention for the 16 years that you were based in New York. But before I do, one last quick question about residential design. You made a comment a moment ago that you have not had the privilege to do much residential design except for your own family. Is that because people have not asked you to, because they think you only do large civic projects? Would you take on a residential project if someone came to your office and said, Mr. Calatrava, would you make a house for us? Would you do it or not?
Yeah, look, you see, I want to underline my admiration for
Yes.
residential design. Also, for this very close character to the person. You see,
Yes.
characterize not only the person who lives in this very intimate environment, but also the group, inside, in my case, for example, my family, whatever.
Yes.
And then, so it's a very important aspect. My circumstances, when I started my career was, here in Switzerland. So I was directly involved in public works from the very beginning, except, small jobs that I received through my colleagues, good colleagues, who said, well, I am renovating this house. Could you not add a balcony? I mean, I had a balcony, or, together with a group of architects, we have done a small bus shelter in Sangave. And so when I was doing those things, I was dreaming the balcony could be a bridge and the bus shelter a railway station. The funny thing is that effectively they became bridges and became also bus stations. But it's a little bit, you are pushed through your circumstances, you see, to enter in a world who is very much related to the community. You understand, to the group.
Yeah.
To the cities, to the development of the cities. It's basically different. I spoke about the intimacy, about the interior, the character of the houses, the privacy and the looking for a direct sensation of protection and cocoon and things like that, which our houses or apartments are bringing us. And here we are in open spaces, solving problems of linking, of traffic, confronted to trains and movement, etc., etc.
When you have 1 million people and must somehow satisfy all of their needs, how do you do that and still make an architectural experience that will have a design experience that will have emotional impact and emotional power?
Yes. Well, it's it's a beautiful and complex question. You see, at the one side, in a personal way, you see, you need to get accustomed to work at least 8 years with the same client. You understand? So that is sometimes even 14, even 16. You understand? So it means also your attitude must to be also, you need to be prepared, that you are meeting people. Take the example of Ground Zero, because there was an enormous emotion. You see, walking through the site and guys, hugging you, and saying fantastic. And so you was feeling the emotion even by the cleaning people. You understand?
Yes.
The people who at the end was letting, the things, ready, that the users could come through and things like that. So it's a unique experience. It's a unique human experience. And this is the first part I want to underline, the human aspect. You need to have a certain attitude and a faith that at the end, the things will go for the best, you see. And then at the other side, also, I think it's very important that from the beginning, a clear idea is given. You see, because people recognize that through the models, through the renderings, through the sketches. You see, people became this, they get enthusiastic. You see, they get this, you see, they understand it's worthy to do that. It's worthy to do that for our community. And I use the word community, you see, because, you see, let me tell you, one of the most beautiful experiences, you see, I have had was building in Milwaukee, you see. small
Ah,
museum.
I was going to ask you about that project.
You see,
Yes.
but the people was so much devoted, to the sense of community. Sometimes you see, the architecture brings you in this kind of feeling, particularly those architectures in which are not born from, let's say, the intention of a small group, but they are trying to cut the elan, the push of a whole generation, a whole city. Isn't it? I think it is, like I said before, being part of these experiences is really a source of let's say, more than proud of humbleness, because you need so many people, to do it, and so much intentions and so much will, but certainly an enormous human satisfaction.
Let us talk a little bit more about the Oculus, the project at Ground Zero in New York that occupied you for so many years, because that involved both one of your most ambitious ideas in a place with such important symbolic meaning, and yet also, of course, had some of the greatest political challenges and financial challenges and so forth. It seemed to me a project that both embodies the best of America in terms of the aspirations and hopes it represented, but also the worst of America in that it was a complex process of lots of political fighting and all the difficulties that we also have here. How did you maintain the integrity of the fundamental idea from the concept through the completion of the building many, many years later?
Well, let me speak first with admiration of a parallel project with the Memorial. You see,
Okay.
I think, you see, is because it resumes very well, it's also a good answer. The Memorial, in my opinion, is an extraordinary work because it's very difficult to say so much with so little. And it's very difficult, just using water, using trees, even the noise of the water, you see, and also mark the void of the former towers, you see, and this idea of solo. Now, you see, there was the evolution of the project who brought our realization very much up front. And the cover page, for example, of the magazine The New Yorker, you see, illustrate 20 years after September 11, and there was a photo with the memorial and the station in the back, and two persons, hugging each other, you see, and I thought that's a masterpiece. Because, you see, it shows, you see, this is what each one of the project wanted to say. At the one side, the sorrow, and then at the other side, the hope. Now, you see, I think this idea of the hope was clear from the beginning, isn't it? And it is that who makes possible this, what we have done, with a group, the Port Authority, for which, you see, I have an enormous respect, and I work with them, and I was also part of the team, like many others. You see, that usually is there to help, that the tunnels works, that the harbors work, that the outposts works, and things like that. And then suddenly they took the commitment, you see, to build something, you see, for the memory, not only, you see, of everybody who passed away in this event, but also particularly for, I think, 80 to 85% of the Port Authority who also passed away in this month. You see, and this thing, this human aspect, who seems to be a little bit stochastic, and so they are not. They are this who makes, that the project during all these years could do this way, to understand that my client wanted to do effectively something extraordinary.
Yes.
You see, that is what, yes, and articulated, with the signs and the symbols we have all together done. Also, another point that it came by case, but there was a small competition to reconstruct the Greek Orthodox Church on place.
Yes,
And
very
you see,
important.
I participated, but because I was previously involved in the Olympics, in Greece, and I'm a big admirer of the Greeks and culture and a lot of sympathy for them. I put all my heart in this small competition, and we also get awarded, to do this small fire, you see, done with Pentelli marble.
And I recall, particularly at the height of the tension over Ground Zero and what would happen there, your project was viewed by people as representing the aspiration and the hope. And because so much of the project was commercial, here was a place where, something would be given back to the public realm. And the idea that a portion of this would be. Let me, if I may, switch gears a little bit. So many of your projects, because of course you began as an engineer, are bridges. What is the difference? What is the basic difference between designing a bridge and designing, say, a train station or an airport or some other large, or museum even? What do you think when you're doing a bridge?
You see, an approach to the art that only the minimalist has given us later on, working with very little elements, working with the forces and working with the let's say, the shapes that forces are asking for, to jump from one side to another and carry something on top of it. But you see, the beauty is that those elements, so minimal, I use the word minimal, down in concrete, the major part of them, you see, are illustrating the most heroic landscapes in the Alps. You see, and there is this beautiful symbiosis between, artificial work and natural surrounding, that it makes them classical. It makes, the Salgina Tobel in Shears, somewhere, in a place to arrive, to a small Alp or something like that, is comparable to me. I say that in all modesty, of course. I know they are big words, to the Poseidon Temple in Sunion. You see, the Poseidon Temple in Sunion, where people go there, to see the sunset and see the ruins there, if you take the ruins away, is another beautiful cape in the beautiful Greek coast. But, the temple makes it, make this place unique. So does the Salgina Tobel to this place. This, you see, Chasta Ravini, you see, coming out of the Alps, with beautiful mountains, snow in the top, and then this fact of the jump, you see, going from one side into the other, this kind of gravity who lets you think, that is like an animal who is just jumping from one, a deer, jumping from one side into the other, or things like this, full of poetry, and full of a poetry also with little words. It's not, the eloquence is not enormous, it's not no decoration, just an arc, just a platform on top of it. And because that I spoke, of minimal art, you see. And these things, fascinate me from the beginning. Even Tavanasa Bridge, all the bridges, some of them, they are only 30, 40 meters. But it learns me, for example, that a balcony can be also like a bridge, for example, when I started. And also all the importance of the bridges related to landscape. That is, in my opinion, very important. And it's also another lecture in the bridges of my art. It is that if you think, for example, what happens in the United States, you see, at the time of Eisenhower as a president, when they decide to build all those interstates.
Yes.
It was fundamental. It was something for the economy of the country, was basic. But the prefabricate bridges that they design, that even, 50, 60, 70 years later are used. You see, they have very little of the poetry of the American prairie, or of the American coast, or the American Rockies, or things like that. Do you understand what I mean? And
I do.
This is what preachers, what preachers are learning us at the other side. You see, you think the Golden Gate, you see. I mean,
Yes.
the Golden Gate makes San Francisco a heroic city, this and the Bay Bridge. Or if you think of the bridges in New York, you see what means, I think, You know that because you are living in New York and you know New York is a city
I'm
of
looking
bridges.
out the
It's
window
a city
right
of bridges,
now.
or the French will say les ponts de Paris, you know, the bridges in Paris. You know, take away the bridges in Paris and make just prefabricate bridges. It's another city. It's another city. And this is the lesson we can receive in our everyday. You see, just opening our eyes and admiring, you know, that when a bridge is done for this place, you see, this place became unique. Let's say unique. And there is this symbiosis between landscape and bridge, or between city and bridge, who are fundamental, you know, fundamental for our life and very important for our culture, because you see, these things survive us and became also legacy. You see, that we are leaving for the coming generation.
You know, as you spoke, it occurred to me that one might say a bridge is really the most beautiful and profound connection between the natural and the man-made. It's where the natural and the man-made come together in a way that reaches the highest and most profound beauty in the connection between the two, I think, in a great bridge. You also spoke, I think, very importantly about the connection to a specific place, even if it's a city and not a natural landscape, which makes me want to come back for a moment to a project you mentioned earlier in our conversation, which was Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Art Museum. I've often been struck by how, which was finished in 2001, by how much that has become a symbol of the entire city. It's really, you know, if I can use the word that is terribly overused today and has often lost its meaning, but I still think in its original meaning, it is appropriate for this building, which is that it's an icon for the city. It's a symbol. How does a building, first, do you agree? And was that part of the intention there? And second, can you think for a moment about how a building or a bridge or any structure becomes symbolic and carries meaning that goes beyond its actual stated function?
Milwaukee is also one of the most enriching experiences we have had, not only me, but also my wife. Indeed, we decided, you see, after Milwaukee, you know, we should live a period in the United States, at least the time that our children goes to the university. And indeed, we move into the United States. But you see, the experience of Milwaukee was, for me, something and because you see, I am now in Europe, you see, I think established a very clear, let's say, a very clear link how in America a public work is acquired and how here in Europe, and what is effectively for our time a separation. For me, it was extraordinary to participate in an event like building a museum paid by privates. Some people maybe contribute with important additions, you understand, with donations or
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
Other people was also involved in the whole endeavor. You see, by, for example, painting a small porcelain plate who was sold to maybe $20 each. You see, in a kind of event, and everybody was participating and helping, you know, in order to achieve the necessary money, you know, to build that. For me, this was an enormous important experience, you know. Predominio de lo comunitario, the community is a very ancestral way, you know, to understand our existence, you know, as person, you know, joining efforts, you know, to achieve something positive. You see, to achieve a piece of art eventually. And I think, you see, this, for me, like I say, you see, the time I spent in the United States has enriched enormous much my life, and I still today am full of admiration.
You've spoken so beautifully about relationships between Europe and the United States and your perspective and your career. What would you say to a young designer right now, looking at the climate of design and architecture, both in the United States and Europe? Are you optimistic? Do you see the respect for design in this culture rising or falling as we look forward? And what would it be like to begin a career now as opposed to when you began your career?
You see, I mean, if you will ask me, if I was a young person, will I again do this, what I have done? I will
Yes.
say yes.
Okay.
That is, you see, this should be, I think architecture is an enormous, architecture and engineering, you know, that you was before commenting, you see, they are very close together. Even, you know, they are phenomena today, you know, like, for example, the computation, all the incoming artificial intelligence are making that the two disciplines, you know, they come closer together. Because you see the fatigue of having to calculate, you know, for example, let's say the George Washington Bridge, you know, by hand. You understand that it has been calculated. Could you imagine, you know, what a daring guys that was? You understand, or things like that. It was extraordinary people, you know, calculating everything by hand, working 250 engineers together, you know, in things that you can today simulate in a computer and receive extraordinary answers, very valuable answers. And even imagine also, for example, what was at the time the questions of oscillation, you know, and dynamic. Think of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Today, you see our computers, they can give you an answer immediately of the first and second and third modus of vibration. And so is, you know, there is, of course, we are in a different, in terms of resources, we are in a very different time. You see, also in terms of education, you see the young people are confronted to having to work with a machine, learn certain programs and all of that. And this is time consuming and a lot of energy consuming. When, for example, in my time, you know, we could maybe take a pencil and or draw with charcoal or whatever, you understand, and express us in a different way. Still, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright say that you need 10 years, you know, to form an architect, you understand? And I believe this is true. I believe you need really a lot of patience and a lot of dedication and a lot of love, and understand also that this profession, it doesn't convey to a point, but opens you towards a whole universe, you know, in which the houses are important, the rooms are important, the bathrooms are important, the chairs are important, the tables are important, the handles in the doors are important. Even the fraction of millimeter is important for the life of a person, as much as, you know, a bridge, you know, like the Golden Gate is important to link to a wonderful place. So, I mean, the nature of the profession and the capacity, our capacity to astonish in front of the nature is there. And I want to call the young people to say that open your eyes, you understand? Open your eyes to the beauty of the nature, you know, whatever you do there of quality, you are touching, you know, much more people. And to discover that this is possible through architecture, you know, and through an altruistic sense and a communitarian sense of architecture, very important for the young people, very important. And they have to be confronted to the computer, to the artificial intelligence, to other things who are coming to our time, you know, as tools. You know, they are tools, you know, to work with, you know, to do even better things. You know, it's extraordinary to do renderings today. You see, you can do a rendering. You see really with shadow, you can change the light, you can change. I mean, it's extraordinary. They are tools, you know, of understanding of how the project is. But we see the soul remains yours, isn't it? That is important.
It seems to me what ties all of this together, it seems to me, is you were talking about a sense of wonder, and
Yes.
and I think part of your gift is that you still retain that sense of wonder yourself, but you also are able to communicate it to others so well. I think, you know, and I fear for any in a young person who does not have that, I think. I mean, that's clearly what I think has motivated you through your career, has been not only knowledge, but knowledge combined with wonder.
Really, if you have eyes to see and you want to see and you look with love these things and with admiration, you see, you really discover this, what others, the aim that others has been following as big as Rodin or others. You see, very important, in my opinion, is a key. You see, to see that the architecture is not something who, even Picasso say, après Lascaux, on n'a rien inventé. This is also attributed to Picasso. After the caves of Lascaux, no more invention. It's everything is there. You know, I mean, it's this kind of things. In the reality, you are repeating a ritual. You are repeating, you are repeating in your life, something that others have done. It's not new. Of course it's new because it was not there. This is what you are doing before. And because it was not there, it's new. But at the other side, your aim, your spirit, your impulse has been repeated and followed by many, many others before.
Wonderful. I think that is a perfect note on which to end. I think this has been fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.